Hey friends, welcome back. So we're going to be continuing on with our tutorials of how to use auto formatting and linting stuff. In the previous episode, we talked about how to do that from your terminal and from your editor, VS Code for example. And this time we're going to be talking about building that into Git hooks. We're going to be specifically looking at just using the auto formatter, prettier in our case because we're working with JavaScript. Yeah, we're going to take it from here. So I'm going to jump out of VS Code because I want to do this from my terminal. It's just easier for me. And we're going to take a look over here. So I'm inside my Git linting example repository. I'll share that in the description, I guess. Now, where the heck do we get started with hooks? When we ls, you can see there's nothing here that we can use. Git hooks are actually in a hidden file called, or directory called .git, right? So we're going to take a little exploration through there. If we cd into .git, you can see there's tons of really interesting information here. This is basically what registers this directory as part of a Git setup, right? You can see information about branches, config, all sorts of stuff. But what we're really interested in for this tutorial is hooks. Hooks. Too many O's there. Let's clear this so we get up to the top. When we cd into hooks, Git is fantastic and gives us a bunch of examples of different types of hooks on different events. So obviously we need to know, what is a hook? A hook is a script, usually, that runs on a specific Git event, right? So we might have things like just before pushing, do a thing. Just before rebasing, do a thing, right? In our case, we're going to do just before committing, do a thing. And what is that thing? That thing is a little shell script. And I've got one prepared here called pre-commit. They do need to be named this exact way, right? At least that's the easiest way to do it. There's probably some config file somewhere where you can change that, but we're going to follow the basics. So, as with any script file, you got to include that shebang line. This basically says, what interpreter are you going to be using for the script? We're going to be using shell. I guess you could probably give it Python or whatever the heck you want, but we're going to stick with shell for this. Now, the first line basically grabs all of the files in the diff, right? So everything that's been changed for this set of commits or something like that, we're going to grab those. So we run a git diff, and then we say, only give me things that are different based on if they were added, copied, modified, or renamed, right? That's these guys. And then I also only want their names, right? I don't want any other information because we're trying to create this list of files that we can use later in the script. Then we're going to do some stuff with sed, so we're piping in those file names, and we're just going to escape all of the spaces. So if you have a file with a space in the name, I recommend you don't do that as often as possible. But if you do, then we're going to add that backslash behind any spaces so that they're escaped. This just makes it so that we can use these strings properly further on in the script. Okay, the next step is pretty simple. We're going to say, hey, if files is empty, just get the heck out, right? Like, it doesn't matter, right? There's nothing to stage, there's nothing to format, who cares? So we can exit with 0, which means success. But in the important situation where you do have files, then what we're going to do is echo those files, and we're going to pipe that. We're going to pipe that to this command, right? So xargs kind of works like a for each of the stuff we just got piped in, right? So if I have file, let's say file1.js, file2.js, something like that, because I couldn't come up with more creative names on the spot. Those are going to go kind of one by one-ish to xargs. And then we're going to treat it like this for each. Like, that's the way that I think about it. For each of those, we are going to run prettier. And we're going to give it the -- right. So if you recall from last episode, -- right, what that does is auto format. So it writes to the file. So instead of just telling you like Chuck does, I'm just going to write those fixes. Cool. And then the last step is, because we've made changes, we have to re-add them, right? We have to redo this. We have to restage them or something like that, right? So what we're going to do is this same echo situation with this list of files. We're going to pipe that in, and then for each of those files, we're going to add them. And recall, this happens right before the commit, right? So now each one of these changes that we just did, the formatting changes, will be included in this commit before we finish, right? And then when all that's said and done, we exit with 0, which is the good job signal, and then we're good to go. Now, let's say we've written that whole thing. I'll make sure that's included in this GitHub repository for people to take a look at. Then we need to make sure that this script is executable. So by default, this is just a text file, right? We need to tell our Unix-like system that this should be executable, right? And the way we do that is chmod, right? So we can just do a quick man chmod, change file mode bits. That's what this does. So we're going to go change, we're going to chmod that, and we're going to hit it with +X. That just means X for executable is the way that I think about that. And we're going to give it the shell file that we want, which is pre-commit. Cool, we've chmodded it. Now we can head out back to the project directory. So let's check git status. You can see there are changes to app.js. So I'm going to just vim this real quick and go to app.js, and we can see that this bad promise function is ugly, right? It's really poorly formatted. Now, what we want to do is pretend that we're committing that, and we forgot to format it with our editor like we did in episode 1. So let's go ahead and I'm going to stage it. We're going to do, and I'm just going to grab everything from source, right? And then we can do a git status, and we can see it's listed in our list of modified files, right? So remember from our script, one of the tags that we were looking for are modified files. So this one's got that. We're good to go. Now, because it's staged, I'm ready to commit that. I'm going to grab my commit message from before. I give it the -m because I just want to write this quickly on the command line without kind of like opening up the full commit message editor. And I'm going to hit git commit and do that. And it includes, so we can see that file there. Okay, now let's open that file up again. And you can see, formatted. We're good to go. It's that easy. Now, of course, because these are just scripts that you can run on any Git event, there's a ton of flexibility you have. If you wanted to run ESLint and like output ESLint data to a file or something like that, so you can be like, oh yeah, this commit sucked, or this commit was great. You can do all sorts of stuff. You can extend this all you like. I wanted to start with this very simple example of using pre-commit hooks to make sure that your code is formatted no matter where you go. The last thing is, I would highly recommend that if you're using these pre-commit hooks, you just share them with the rest of your team, right? It's not that useful to format your code unless everybody on the team is formatting it the same way. So I would hope that in episode 1, everybody sets up their editor in the same sort of way with prettier and ESLint. And then you might want to share your Git hooks as well. Anyways, that's all for this. For the next episode, we're going to be talking about what happens when somebody skips all of these steps and pushes code to GitHub without doing any of the formatting. How can we deal with that issue? So that's for next time.